Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome back to Reinventing Mental Health, where we are moving beyond symptom management to actually finding root cause treatments for mental health symptoms. Today, we have with us my friends Dodge, Feeler, and Drake. Drake has been on our podcast before. He came on and talked to us about peptides, and him and Dodge have some really amazing things going on right now. So, thank you guys both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Excited to be back.
So, Dodge, tell us a little bit about you, but we want to know more about you and what you guys are doing together.
Sure. My name's Dodge Feeler. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have background in hair restoration, a lot of hormones. I worked at hospitals for a time. Really getting into this space, I've always working ICU. I'd always just see patients just extremely sick, not getting better, especially with diabetes. I'd slowly see more and more things cut off, and I've always hated that. And at a very early 20s, I started getting kind of passionate about, living well and just finding ways to naturally stay healthy while also using the tools that we have available. And we kind of just stumbled into weight loss. I had some friends just say, you've got to do it. You've been doing this for years. I also have a lot of time spending in bodybuilding, which is where I really dug into peptides. A lot of time they're 10 to 20 years ahead of everybody else. And so I started a telemedicine business where while I am using different peptides, I'm also trying to show people another way to live. And then, I became really good friends with Drake. And I was just like, I've got to spend time with this guy. We got to work together. And I got the opportunity, and he joined the team, and he's now one of my partners. And, we're trying to show others a different way to live, not just getting caught up in the medical system and finding ways to naturally live as well and as long as possible.
So, our viewers right now are going to be really interested in the hormone component of this. We have the Perimenopause conference coming up, and I know that both of you are going to be presenters for that event. But we are seeing perimenopause hitting what seems to be younger and younger. I have more women walking into our office that are in their 30s, some of them their early 30s. And, they come in, the conversation is, I'm broke, I'm depressed, there's something wrong with me, even though my life is great. And, my doctors are telling me it's all in my head. So what are you guys seeing inside of that space?
I mean, you can see where women were going to menopause more like the 60s or even later through most of time. And suddenly we've got women, sometimes even under 30, where they're having low progesterone is what I see a lot of the time, especially. Mm-hmm. But I think it's, we're not out chasing our food and hiding dinosaurs anymore. But a lot of it just not even perceiving stress. We're bombarded with LED lights, our circadian rhythms are wrecked. And then you've got microplastics and toxins and heavy metals and everything. So I think it's just sort of the world we live in. We're kind of stuck with things that are not helpful for our HPT axis. Right. So it's, you like to find natural ways. I'm all about trying to realign your circadian rhythm. At the same time, we are at a place where we need tools unless we're all going to Costa Rica and start farming and follow the sun's path. Otherwise, we are just kind of a place we've got to find ways to back to home spaces.
Okay. So inside of our office, the primary symptoms that I'm seeing with these women tend to be anxiety, depression, and then their stress is high because of these particular symptoms. So when it comes to mental health, what do these hormones do to the brain?
I kind of just started with paying attention to our main hormones, testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. Mm-hmm. And, testosterone, a lot of the time it can be anxiety, but you also have apathy. You're stuck and you don't know what to do and you're scared. Yeah. And with that, it's, I think a big driver here is that it actually increases dopamine and increases dopamine sensitivity. And so if they're low, that's going to be the big driver. Kind of what I started coming up with is the hormones are somewhat of the driver or the light, and then the neurotransmitters are having the conversation, right? So hormones, that's going to be minutes, hours, days even.
Drake, what are you seeing?
I'll talk a little bit about what Doc said with the perimenopause and the hormones. There's a lot of disconnect with, especially women, when it comes to their hormones and how they're feeling, because a lot of times if people have anxiety or they feel depressed or if they're low motivation, they think they need to do talk therapy. They think it's a internal problem, when a lot of times it's like a mental problem versus a hardware problem.
Mhm.
Again, we're kind of poisoned by our environment, which is interesting because plastic is considered xenoestrogen, like all these microplastics and everything, they mimic estrogen without actually doing anything for estrogen. So in a sense, the convenience of plastics is actually robbing us of our time. So it's causing all these health issues, especially in women, much, much earlier. As sad as it is, the only thing I've seen sadder is the 8-year-old girls I've seen going through puberty. There's more and more stories of all this.
Yeah.
Being able to clean all that up, getting it out of our systems to minimize plastics, number one. But yeah, the hormones getting mimicked and having all these essentially pretend hormones in our body, causing depression at staggering rates, combined with social media and these new ways of life that we're living. It's not just one thing, it's this culmination of so many different variables to life that our ancestors didn't have to deal with. So we're struggling to find answers to all of this, and it's using old knowledge with newer technology to try and figure out the best ways to approach everything. Because I know you guys, we've all been a bit experienced. We've lived multiple revolutions in our life. That used to be like a once in a lifetime thing. Now we didn't have a cell phone growing up because they didn't exist. Remember the first one being the little Nokia phones where you could play Snake on it. I got that in high school. Like dial-up internet was a thing when I was 8. These things didn't exist, and we're living in an entirely new world. So all these things are directly messing with us. And they did do studies on how it affects our hormones, like Dr. said with circadian rhythm. All of our hormones are on a cycle. And unfortunately, we figured out men's hormones before women's. So that's why so many women are struggling now, because the science wasn't there for so
Now, what is your theory around why the science hasn't been there? Why was it not so important for them to figure out the female hormones as it was the male hormones? Because that is part of the conversation. Women were left out of that equation. We were just told, oh, you're just emotional. Oh, you're the crazy mom, or, whatever those things were. Why?
Personally, I think there's multiple factors to it. One, for the longest time, STEM has been male dominated. So researchers, scientists, the doctors, it's primarily men, it's been changing over the years, which is why more women's studies have been coming out. But that was relatively recent, maybe 20, 30 years ago, where there's more women entering that part of the workforce. And medicine is one of the slowest to catch up to any scientific advancements. There needs to be dozens of peer-reviewed studies before a doctor will even feel comfortable saying, I can use this with my clients in Western medicine.
They say that the lag between clinical research and doctors and hospitals actually picking up the research is about 14 years.
Yeah, scientific advancement is one death at a time.
So you were talking about these girls that are entering puberty really, really young. And we have actually had girls in our office as young as 5 who are having their first period. Which that is why they're with us, is because they were not prepared for this experience. So they're experiencing a lot of depression. And of course, there's emotionality that a 5-year-old brain is not even close to being prepared for the hormone cycle of menstruation. What are some of the things that you're seem to be key indicators of why these girls are entering puberty so young?
I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind is the food supply. If we're eating fast food, a lot of times there's a lot of growth factors, because in America, it's always how quick can we grow. Go to other countries, and a lot of the vegetables and fruit are a little more expensive because they're more focusing on quality of food.
So what I'm seeing with like these girls for as young as 5 hitting this, again, I've only really seen the stories going as young as 8, but it makes perfect sense that it's getting younger and younger, is going back to all the toxins that are exposed to everyone at such a young age. And it's not even the child being exposed in their foods and their environment. It's that they're also being flooded with these toxins while they're in their mother's womb. Like, there was a really good book by Dr. Shanna Swan talking about embryonic development being messed up with the ingestion of phthalates and microplastics because they act as false hormones in the body. When you have an entire human being growing inside of you, disrupting that with these chemicals and toxins and these things that are telling your body one thing without actually doing things, it's causing a whole cascade of problems down the road. And the saddest part is that so many mothers also blame themselves for this, but they didn't know. This science is so new that most of this didn't know. Like, most people, 99.99% of the population didn't know it was even a thing 10 years ago. And honestly, now, it's maybe 99% don't know it. We do kind of live in a bubble being in this space. The amount of people we've talked to that they simply don't know these things, it's staggering. Even though we've known this for a while, it feels like common sense. So many people don't. Every time I go to anything with my daughter at her school or go to any of these functions with other kids, I see what the parents are feeding them, like letting them wear perfumes, doing all these things that can really mess up the endocrine system. They don't know that wearing makeup has all these tiny toxins in it that seep in through the pores and can mess with a child. They don't know that perfumes have the fragrancers which can mess with your brain. Like, there's so many things that people just aren't aware of. And unfortunately, the stuff that doesn't have the toxins is more expensive, which is also really annoying.
Yes.
Right.
I know that as a mom. There are times where we're looking for something and, we find the product that's clean, that's got all the organic ingredients. The only scents might be coming from essential oils, and it's $86 for the same thing that you can get for $17 if you're not going with clean products.
Yeah, and it's across the board, whether it's clothing, food, makeup, anything.
Yeah.
It's just more expensive to not be poisoned in today's day and age.
Which is crazy.
I'll say the one benefit is that because there's more and more of a demand for it, the more people are educated on this. I'm seeing some of these things not necessarily come down in price, but they're not going up as much as some of the other less healthy products are. Look at McDonald's, for example. Their food is not cheap anymore. No. It's like, you can't, and now people are like, why buy this when I can get a good version of this for like $1 more?
I was recently talking to somebody about water and the fact that our public water and even our groundwater is contaminated. And it is contaminated by hormone disruptors, including birth control pills, and even Viagra has made it into the water supply. What do you guys feel or think in your experience that could be doing to our children as well as ourselves?
I just miss the old days when it was just cocaine in the water. I remember that was like a weird study back in like the 80s. There was so much cocaine. People were flushing their cocaine that it was actually amounts in your water. And
I remember the dollar bill one. I don't remember the water one.
You think about things like birth control. We already know it's a bastardized hormone that women's bodies don't really know how to tolerate that. It's kind of even unfathomable to imagine what that might be doing to a child. They're still just developing, they're growing, the brain's still developing. So I can't imagine it being helpful, which is why paying attention to what the water is that you're drinking is actually really important. Drayke and I spend a lot of time talking about which water system do we even use, which I think we both use the same one now. And then you drink that water and it doesn't really taste right, but you at least know that it's clean. It's taken the fluoride out. It's taken out all the toxins that we're trying to avoid. And then you have to figure out a way, how do I even restructure this water to make it something that's actually going to be helpful for our cells?
So I know everybody jokes about I'm like, his name will not come up right now, but the guy who's saying they're making the frogs gay.
It's making the freaking frogs gay.
Yeah, there is some discussion that needs to happen around that. We are putting hormones into young children's bodies and then even our bodies that are coming from the water. And if we're not supposed to have these hormones at these particular levels, there's definitely going to be an impact on that, whether that's fertility, hitting puberty earlier, hitting perimenopause earlier. We do have higher and higher rates right now also of infertility, people just not being able to conceive. And there's a hormone component that does also have an impact on mental health in a lot of different capacities. So what do you guys see as driving many of the clients you're working with in perimenopause right now? Is it diet? Is it stress? Because stress is something that they're pointing to in this age group. Is it that they were on birth control when they were younger? Because that's also got to be part of the conversation. We're putting girls on birth control as young as 12.
I'd say all three of those are major drivers. I mean, I think of one patient I had that I'll talk to them about what their day is like. And you would start at 5 a.m. getting her kids ready. And a lot of times she'd be home at 10. So in between that time, she's not sleeping. So her stress is immeasurable. And then food, they have to eat somehow. So they're running by a fast food place to get their food. Slow down.
Yeah.
How do you ask them to go to make sure they're drinking some sodium to wake up their adrenal glands and putting their feet in the dirt, and then also watching the sunrise while their life is hectic and they're going to probably just laugh at you?
I know I'm busy dragging my daughter out of her plane just to get her ready for school, let alone trying to make time to go and watch the sunrise. I understand it, and I think that's what makes me and Dasha brave. Like, we have kids. We're not just talking about these things. Like, we know the importance and we know the struggles of doing the things. So I will say, if I was going to list those, stress is probably number one.
Yeah.
Because all the other things kind of lead into stress. The amount of women I've known that are like, oh, I'm trying to change up my diet because I'm stressed, but the diet is causing me stress. It's like, it's a vicious feedback loop into just more and more stress.
Yeah. But we live such fast-paced lives right now. And women right now, they're working full-time jobs, being moms, being wives, trying to manage these 9,000 things that are on their plate every single day. Our kids are in way too many activities. I hear that all the time, which does not help the children's stress, but certainly doesn't help mom's stress either. So cortisol is definitely part of this conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing that people's cortisol levels are too high or too low or just struggling to cycle?
So that's interesting because a lot of the testing we're seeing with like AM cortisol levels, rare to actually see them in like super high or super low, even if the person's saying like they've got a very stressful life. But so that's something like a lot of people are looking for, like, oh, my cortisol levels are fine, they take the AM. But what tends to happen is that the stress wears on other organs before you start to see negative issues. So like if a client has like high stress levels or super low stress levels, that could be a lagging indicator. Like their ability to modulate that stress downstream of something else. And that kind of goes back to the diet, that goes back to lifestyle. Like, what are you doing to help support your body and keep it strong, resilient? Women that have thyroid problems is staggering. Like it's way too much. Thyroid is going to be something that's heavily impacted by stress because thyroid is your energy production manager of your body. And with stress, you're using a lot more energy because stress was initially like, there's certain situations where stress is good. If you need to lift something heavy in an emergency situation, your body needs a stress, dumps adrenaline, and you can go. You have the energy. But when you're chronically taxing that, you're hitting your thyroid, and it's going to lead to worse and worse thyroid levels. So you start seeing more and more women needing thyroid medications, which is then going to lead to a dysregulated thyroid because most thyroid medications are only T3 or T4, occasionally both, but it's not the whole spectrum of thyroid hormones. So you're just depleting your thyroid. And when your thyroid's kind of destroyed, that's when you start seeing the low or high cortisol levels.
Well, the thyroid also has an impact on your hormones, correct? Okay.
With the stress too, there's something called pregnenolone still, which you may or may not have heard of, but obviously that's the kind of grandmother steroid. And
Okay.
when we're in that state of high stress all the time, it's actually going to be taking away from making all of our sex hormones. So everything's going to cortisol. And another one I talk about, like DHEA, which I was doing a little refresher on it, but it's sort of like the shock absorber to cortisol. It actually helps to modulate GABA receptors.
Something I like to recommend for people that are experiencing high levels of stress, bit of burnout, they're worried it might be like adrenal fatigue, is getting a DHEA supplement. So you can go anywhere from like 25 milligrams to 100 milligrams. Literature is a bit mixed on how much you should take. I like 100 milligrams. I've not really seen much negative issues with anyone really taking that much, but everyone's going to react a little differently. But you can take certain supplements and it'll help a lot with stress. And people are always saying like ashwagandha is like the number one. It's helpful, but I don't like taking adaptogens for super long periods of time. Whereas like DHA is something your body's going to create and it will cycle it off and on, but it, as weird as it sounds, taking like synthetic DHEA is more readily utilized by the body than an herb like ashwagandha.
Okay. Yeah, we use it from time to time with someone for mood regulation. Yeah. Okay, so inside of a lot of the menopause groups, there's a lot of discussion right now around actually using hormone replacement therapies. You've got the one side that's pushing 100% only do hormone replacement therapy. That's the answer. Other side inside of a lot of these women's group is saying absolutely don't do it. But these hormone replacement therapies are going to cause cancers. So where is the actual middle ground on this? As somebody who is going through perimenopause and has been dealing with it for the last 2 years, I can definitely say testosterone was one of my best friends when I got it. My level right now is not the best. I need to get it back up, but I stopped doing the pellet because my numbers actually went way too high at one point. So where's the middle ground for people that are worried about cancer, and what are natural alternatives that they can use?
I think it helps have a choice. There are some herbals and things like that can mimic estrogen. I wouldn't say I'm 100% for giving hormone replacement, but I do think that it's something that can be very beneficial for birth control. So a lot of that is just not really relevant. They just took off the black box. I think obviously you've got to pay attention to family history, to what have they had any type of cancer, obviously consistent lab monitoring. Are they living a healthy lifestyle to reduce those chances of cancer? So obviously, normal working out, diet. So I wouldn't say you absolutely have to do hormones. If you're able to change up lifestyle, optimize your nutrients, also give this a chance. But at the same time, if you're going down the road, are you going to be able to make those changes to see, are you going to feel that?
So a lot of the women that are like in that age bracket of perimenopause, menopause, they grew up with the doctrine of fat. You eat fat, you get fat. And so many women, they don't want to be fat. However, fat is essential for creating hormones. If you were just 0 grams of fat every day, you would quickly die. Like your body would not know what to do with itself. So you need to be getting healthy, adequate amounts of fats in your diet. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, women tend to not use much animal fat as men do. Most men have no problem eating more steaks, but healthy animal fats, they're the most bioavailable for us to utilize to create more hormones. Whereas, just don't get me wrong, there's some plant fats that are excellent for you. Olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, they're all fantastic. They're all different lengths of carbon and how the body utilizes it. But animal fats are going to reign supreme when it comes to properly creating hormones endogenously. And so a lot of these women, they go low fat for years because that's what they grew up with. I need to lose weight. I'm going to eat less food. Oh, what has the fewest calories? Oh, things that don't have fat in it, because fat is more calorically dense macronutrient. So they just start cutting out all these fats. Oh, my hair's getting thinner. My nails are brittle. My skin's looking washy. They do all these things that's in the pursuit of getting smaller, but not.
We know that those people that do low fat diets and the people that do sugar free drinks or sugar alternatives, they are actually more likely to develop later on in life in the mental health aspect, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. Because when we remove fat from the diet, we actually demyelinate the brain. We don't lay the foundation of fat that the brain actually needs. And the fat in the brain is vital. The two most important things that probably need to make it to the brain are fat and sugar. The brain needs those two things. So doing a low fat, no fat diet is actually quite detrimental neurologically as well as biologically.
You look at the scans done on vegan brains. I have my own issues with like veganism, but multiple studies have shown that like vegan brains tend to just be smaller than omnivorous or carnivorous human brains just because they're not getting the proper fats to create the brain. The brain is 50% fat.
So we see when teenagers or kids are on vegan type diets, they actually have really high anxiety. And I've seen that over and over and over again inside of our office, and very frequently have to do psychoeducation with the children and their parents around the need for specific fats to make it to the brain and why animal proteins are actually really important for resolution of the anxiety. Are there particular meats that you feel contain more hormones and cause more disruption than other ones?
I don't know if meats contain them. You've got the RBST treated cows that's who knows what. I've not actually seen those in grocery stores, but I don't know what McDonald's is serving. They own the whole supply chain, but grain-fed cattle is terrible. The fatty acid profile is drastically different than grass-fed. And when you start eating that, your body's taking in these toxins that the cows are eating, and it's just kind of being created into your own body. Your body's building itself out of what you're eating.
Well, I know some breeds of chicken as well, depending on the supplier that you have, they have altered chicken so much that the breast is so large on specific chickens that they actually can't stand up. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking about, we usually get organic chicken or something that's much smaller, but, sometimes if you buy those big breasts, it's unbelievable. I mean, they're massive.
Yeah.
They're larger than the turkey breast at times. A lot of times they'll pump it with water and some other things to kind of plump it up. But it's very obvious that what we're eating in the store is definitely not what our ancestors were eating 100 years ago.
Oh, for sure. My grandparents owned a farm, and I watched multiple animals be butchered. I never saw a chicken with a breast the size of what it is that I see in some of these grocery stores.
Which, even as a hunter, I've processed a lot of animals, and you're not finding anything like that in nature. And
no,
they're not going to show us what those studies look like if they've done them on what that's doing to the human body. But it's obviously showing out in society.
So
If
what
you
are we?
eat sick animals, you're going to be a sick animal. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah,
Or we-
exactly. Food can either be medicine or poison, one of the two. So now, what do we think the long-term consequences are on our population with these hormones continuing to be flooded into us? What do we think that's going to look like in the future?
We're seeing the increases of cancer and different types of cancers, Alzheimer's, and dementia's going up, which obviously I think that's a complex multifactorial thing. It has a lot to do with metabolic disease, but I think we will continue to see a sicker population unless we can make a big turn.
And with women hitting perimenopause so early, how does that impact reproductive rates right now? Because many women nowadays are waiting till after 30 to even think about getting pregnant.
I haven't seen the statistics lately, but we know fertility is going down dramatically, men especially, but both genders, fertility is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And I don't have as much data on younger women because most of them are 29 or older, but I've seen a lot of lab tests on men, and I've seen some, as low as 20 on men. They have almost no testosterone. And so it's very obvious that what we're doing is impacting everything. even myself, I had a little bit of some fertility issues, and fortunately I am pretty well educated on it, and I was able to resolve things in a couple months. But I've seen it over and over again where men, especially, and that's most because I've dealt with more men fertility than.
So we recently had a case, a 17-year-old that it was a male and dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety, a lot of negative self-talk, spending a lot of time in the gym, but could not develop muscle, could not get their primary care physician to order a testosterone test. But to me, if a 17-year-old male is spending hours at the gym and not developing muscle, that's the first thing we need to be looking at is what's going on with his testosterone level. His testosterone came back and it was like 15. And at the age of 17, that number should be skyrocketing, not plummeting like that. So we are also seeing in the mental health space, there's an impact of these hormone disruptions on males too.
Yeah, it's that. I used to do personal training, and I've seen so many like teenagers come in and for like 6-7 months, like they make no gains. I showed a few of them how to lift properly, and like they're just not seeing the increases they should. And you can tell it's like their energy is like they want to do this. This is like what their goal is, to get stronger, because age. So they're thinking about women less. Like, let me get stronger, let me look good. And honestly, it could be fixed if someone talks to them about testosterone. But that's absolutely not talked about in schools, is how your hormones play a role in your overall health, well-being, and everything. And the worst part is like going to GNC and getting these testosterone boosters that are filled with who knows what chemicals. Right. That some random influencer was like, yeah, this is amazing. It's going to boost your testosterone by hundreds of points, when it's trash. There's so many scams out there for that.
Unfortunately, if that really works, there's usually going to be some sort of type of androgen that's actually in that. And that's not new. I mean, I was 18 years old the first time I was just getting protein, and someone was like, hey, you should try this. And suddenly I'm gaining like 10 pounds of muscle, and I have no idea even what I've gotten myself into.
There are a few times where I say that should be regulated. And I'm not a fan of regulations at the whole thing. There are some supplements out there that most of them are taken off the market, but like they were destroying people's overall endogenous hormone production. By the end of that school year, he was in the hospital because it enlarged his heart so much. He was having struggles at like 16 or 17.
Yeah. So how can we help to educate more people on the impact of hormones in the mental health space?
Really just doing podcasts like this, talking to people, and spreading out good information. There's so much bad information out there. Like I said, like there's influencers out there all the time. They're just saying controversial stuff just to get views. They're saying this product is terrible or this product is amazing, even though it's really trash. But really, like the simplest stuff is the stuff they can't monetize, so you don't hear about it. Mm-hmm. Going to get that sunlight, going to get your feet in the earth, eating high protein, high quality fats. So they're talking about the things like, I have an affiliate code for this company. Click this link, put in my promo code, boost your testosterone, and I make some money. It's a weird place we live in right now.
Agreed.
I do agree with Drake. I think it's offering podcasts and grassroots work. I get more and more 17 or so year old guys are like, hey, how do I do what you've done? And I'm like, well, I prefer that you not do things exactly how I've done, but it's choosing to share information freely in a way like at least you can give them that. Because obviously if a 17-year-old kid has a 15 of testosterone, you really prefer, unless they have Klinefelters or something like that, you don't want to start them on hormone replacement therapy that young. So it just educates on, at least get to the basics and see what can we do naturally to help out. And if that doesn't work, obviously you have to use a tool. I don't know anything else other than getting that kind of information out for free and just telling anyone that's willing to listen.
Yeah.
And also, so they know there are HRT alternatives that we can utilize. If your testosterone is low, male or female, you don't have to go on testosterone. You can try other products like inclomifene that can improve testosterone for males, especially you can do HCG. Mm-hmm. There are alternatives. They are pharmaceuticals because they're very powerful, but they don't stop your own endogenous production. So you can do these things to help kickstart you in the right direction. So that way you can create your own supply and not be reliant on tea for the rest of your life.
So how much of this conversation is also like we've talked about the fact that we're living in a toxic world, but one of the groups that I'm in for perimenopausal women was actually talking about the fact, and I think Hyman talks about this as well, that it is possible in some cases to reverse some of these symptoms just through detox.
I've personally seen a lot of reversals of perimenopausal. I've seen women who were supposedly menopausal regain their period in their late 50s doing some of these more alternative treatments, which just means that their body was in a healthy spot. They started recreating their own hormones again.
So if we're having these conversations with women and we want them to possibly look at the detoxification thing, which I think needs to be a big conversation in all of the spaces. It's huge in the mental health space, but when it comes to hormones, there's nobody having that conversation. So what is a way that a woman can get a test to figure out what am I toxic in right now?
So you can do heavy metals testing, oats testing, hair mineral analysis testing. I also just, I think with a lot of women too, the first question is even just, are you pooping regularly? Like if you're constipated, you're not excreting the estrogen that you already have. So you're more likely to be estrogen dominant. And obviously you have that scenario, progesterone is going to be lower. And just like that alone is a good start. I mean, I love testing, obviously. Just finding out simple things to actually help somebody is very helpful. That's usually a first step that I like to look at. Just how is your poop?
There's a test I really like. It's a micronutrient test. I believe Genova created it. It's a NutriEval. It's very comprehensive. It tests all of your micronutrient panels so you can see if you're deficient. It tests oxidative stress. It tests your ability to methylate foods, minerals, nutrients. That's one of my favorite tests. But again, going back to knowledge, like before I even had access to this, it's the questions. You can determine a lot with the right questions.
So we get pushback sometimes in our office because I think we're probably the only mental health office that's actually asking those questions. It's on our intake forms. I ask, what are you eating? What are you drinking? How often are you pooping? How's your sleep? Do you wake up rested? All of these questions, because people don't seem to equate those with mental health at all. So for most of the perimenopausal women that you guys are working with right now, where are you guys seeing some of the best benefits for people right now? Is it in hormones? Is it in peptides? Is it in detoxification? Or is it a combination of all of those things?
I'd say, it is all three. Obviously, if you're helping them detox, that's going to make a huge change. There are plenty of women who they're just not interested in hormones yet. So we focus on getting them healthy as they can outside of that option, whether it's gut health. Obviously, that's a massive factor. And I think that's the thing, creating a protocol or a plan. You do have to find ways to focus on a couple priorities, but we are complex creatures, especially women, which is where Drayke and I learned very quickly that we have to do the listening for women because we aren't women. And it is a challenge, but I've spent a lot of time studying the cycle. And we've been talking a lot about it, but women are not made to be working 12 hours a day. There are times during that month that you can definitely kill it and work for 12 hours. Obviously you do it, you have no choice, but there are times of that month that you should be resting and thinking inward, where now you don't have that option. And so it's just completely unnatural.
Mary, there's days where you shouldn't be working 12 hours a day.
Yeah, we're talking to you, doesn't answer our text message for 12 hours. She's over there just grinding away.
There are so many of us right now, myself included, that we have to work. We have to be putting forth the effort, and groceries are expensive right now. I am terrified every time I go to the grocery store or the farmer's market because we do eat healthy. We don't do the junk food or any of those things. I am terrified every week of our grocery bill.
Yeah.
So,
$112. This is a bag. This is one bag. It's not even full.
yep.
I get raw milk only. And that alone is a small fortune.
Mhm.
But it's worth it because I know what I'm giving my children and myself and my wife. I know that they're at least getting the best of what we can get a hold of.
And I look at it as an investment in our health. Like, we don't have healthcare insurance, but we're hardly ever at the doctor's. If something comes around, for the most part, we've got something that we can use homeopathically and we're going to be just fine. So we're choosing to eat our medicine and just make sure that we stay healthy in the long run.
I also want to put a caveat out there about the detox, to circle back on there. It upsets me how many women, there's some guys that on this as well, but they just keep doing detox after detox because this one didn't work. That one didn't work. I'm still trying to detox. And this whole time they're running through all these different kinds of cleanses and juicings and different kinds of detoxifications, but they're not focusing on building up their own resilience. They're kind of destroying their body. If you do these detoxifications are not meant to be
Forever.
multiple weeks, every single year, like even months. It's supposed to be, you do it for a few weeks and it works. If it doesn't, there's another issue. And you build your body before you go into another detox. You know, women that have gone from water cleansing to juicing to doing some random detox they found on a website that's got super powerful detoxification agents. And they're just wrecking their system because their body doesn't have the nutrients and minerals that they need to properly thrive, because detoxing gets rid of the bad stuff, but it also gets rid of the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, and if you don't detox correctly either, like, you have to understand phase 1 and phase 2 of detox. If you're not activating both of those pathways, you could actually make yourself much sicker very, very quickly. If you're only activating phase 1, then all you're doing is moving the toxins. You're not actually getting any of them out of your system.
I'm a very big fan of more like a detox maintenance, which is our bodies are wonderfully made. You know, we have lungs, we have liver, kidneys, and obviously not everyone's going to be able to go to a sauna 5 days a week, but we can sweat. Again, making sure that you're pooping, like making sure that we're maintaining what our bodies are capable of when it comes to detox. I mean, I love N-acetylcysteine and glutathione and all the things that can help with that, but it is like some of this stuff is actually free. And obviously the sun, acting up your mitochondria. I was watching a video just talking about a peptide MOTC, but I was reminded that our mitochondria are actually capable of restructuring water, which just blew my mind to remember that. So it's, yeah, I the more you learn, the more you're actually just amazed with the body. So.
I know which video you were watching.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to share it. So the big rage inside of many of the communities, including the perimenopausal community right now, are these GLP-1s. And then the newest one, which I know Drake and I have been talking about, the GLP-3. So are you guys seeing that there's actually any hormonal benefits using any of these products? I
firsthand know someone who I helped lose over 60 pounds, and at the time she was infertile. And she is now 3 months pregnant. She had a lot of issues there. And just by getting the weight off, reducing inflammation, which you see over and over again with the GLPs, she was, kill it. So, it can be amazing. Obviously, GLPs also have the shadow side of everything. So we do like to really focus on as low a dose as possible.
The GLP-1s are fantastic.
They also have the impact, though, on insulin sensitivity, correct, and insulin resistance, which does play a huge part in perimenopause. So what are you guys seeing with that?
So with the insulin sensitivity, it's far more important than I think most people realize is being insulin sensitive.
Yep.
Because every single cell in our body utilizes insulin to bring in fuel. So when you're insulin resistant, it's a whole cascade of problems like lethargy, PCOS, infertility. There's so many problems that can be solved if you're a bit more insulin sensitive. And the GLP-1s are, hands down, there is nothing else that comes close to the GLP-1s for increasing insulin sensitivity. Even the old school like metformin, which has been around for decades, doesn't hold a candle to semaglutide. And terzepatide and retatrutide, GLP-2 and 3, are significantly more powerful. That is. So increasing insulin sensitivity is fantastic. I've seen many recent case studies of women going on GLP-1 and they start getting pregnant, where I remember reading really fascinating articles like Ozempic babies. It's indirectly affecting the hormones just by being insulin sensitive, because it is putting your body in a healthier state. So when your body needs to work less to do the things it's supposed to do, it has more energy to create the hormones, to create more mental energy, to do all these things. So the GLP-1s, they do have some drawbacks for a lot of people, especially long term. But I do think properly utilized, everyone can use a GLP-1 here and there, and they'll get amazing benefits out of it.
So a lot of people don't realize that insulin is actually involved in fertility, especially for women. Ovulation is actually controlled by the pancreas and making sure that insulin is released at the right times. You brought up PCOS. That was something that I struggled with many, many, many years ago. My case was one of the worst my doctors had ever seen. They actually told me to have a hysterectomy at the age of 19 because I had over 100 cysts on one ovary when I went in for an ultrasound. Nobody at the time said anything at all about the fact that if we deal with my insulin sensitivity, or insulin resistance is what I ended up actually having at that point in time, that all the cysts would go away. And I went on to the keto diet and I lost 80 pounds and I haven't had a cyst since. So I did not like metformin. Metformin, actually, my gastrointestinal doctor thinks that that's what actually caused my celiacs.
There's a possibility. Metformin's got some weird interactions with some people and how it affects them. So it's not for everyone. I do really like it for a lot of issues, but I have seen that some people do not react well to it.
Yeah.
Because it does play, it's a major player that doctors don't talk about. And disrupts, sometimes most of the time in a beneficial way, your gut microbiome, but sometimes in a very bad way, which is most likely why you develop some kind of a reaction to gluten.
Yeah. So Dodge, do you work with a lot of people that have PCOS?
I don't work with tons, but I have had some, and I will often start with suggesting things like resistance training. And I don't always suggest keto diet, but I do think that's obviously a great way to start.
Mm-hmm.
I have had a lot of benefit there though, just because of what it does with insulin resistance. I'm also, I also will usually suggest a handful of supplements like berberine and alpha lipoic acid and things like that. But everyone's just so individual. It's kind of like just playing a game, trying different things and just finding what works best for them. But I have seen some pretty amazing results with just focusing on getting them active resistance training. I did a lot of that for my master's thesis. I actually worked with PCOS, and study after study has shown that getting them in the gym, that would remove the movers there.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like many of the girls that come to us very young, starting their cycles, are being diagnosed with PCOS between the ages of 12 and 14.
It all goes back to food quality. Nothing makes me more upset that my daughter loves Lunchables. I will not, in good conscience, buy them. But there's so many toxins in all these foods, especially the ones targeted toward children. It's so bad.
It's tough too. It's the world we live in. We do our best at my home, but we do have the occasional, usually like once a week, we will still eat fast food. I do my best to live in integrity, but you do have to live your life. And when you do that, I think it's just trying to choose to be guilt-free and not let yourself stress yourself out about it, because that I think is usually going to be worse than the other stuff. Because if you're moving your body, you're taking care of yourself, all the other ways, your body is going to be able to get rid of what it's not going to serve it at all.
And see, that's great for those of us that have the knowledge, but I work with so many families that come into my office and they think they're doing the right thing by picking up the yolk plate because it's yogurt, not realizing the yogurt is nothing but food, dye, and sugar. There's actually no benefits in that particular brand of yogurt. And then the juice that you're picking up has synthetic folic acid in it, and that's actually causing other consequences. But the same with bread, cereal, pasta, like they put all of these synthetic ingredients in it that people don't realize are there when they think that they are making healthy decisions.
Yes, I mean, those are filler foods. There's actually no nutritional benefit to any of them, and obviously they're mostly negative. It's a battle, but then you also have to talk kids into it.
So we used to do a class with some of our kiddos, and it was about cooking. But one of the classes that we did, we actually took them to the grocery store. And we used apps like Yuka and other ones that allow you to scan your food and see what's in it. And by doing that with kids and then seeing what's actually in the food that they're eating on a regular basis, it had more of an impact on the family, changing the way that they were eating because the kids were the ones driving it.
I love that.
That's brilliant.
Really amazing book by Sean Stevenson.
Mhm.
It's a cookbook, but he talks about the power of eating with your family, eating with the kids, getting them all involved. And study after study was like showing like if the kids are involved in the cooking process, the picking the foods and all these things, like you're giving them more responsibility. They are going if they have the knowledge, they do want to choose the healthier thing, especially if they can make it taste good.
Yeah. Yep. I'm a huge proponent for kids being in the kitchen and helping cook. We have a huge epidemic of picky eaters in our country. Part of that problem is all of these foods that are advertised to the kids, right? You can only eat Purdue, or you have to have the Lunchables, or whatever it is. But what most people don't realize is these kiddos actually restrict their list more because of food sensitivities and vitamin deficiencies than anything else. So when you bring kids into the kitchen and you're allowing them to see what's in their food, you take ownership for what it is that's going on the table, they're actually more likely to eat what it is that you're putting on the table.
Wow. Well, it's teaching them to live in integrity.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it, and obviously this is not so much activities about mental health, it's actually getting your kids involved and spending quality time with them. Take that moment of gratitude. It's teaching them to last in life.
Well, and that goes back to those longevity studies too, right? A sense of community, even inside of your family. Right now, there's tons of families that we talk to in our office. They have never sat down around the kitchen table. Some of them don't even have a kitchen table. Everybody comes home, they grab something from the kitchen, and they all go to their respective rooms and do homework or scroll social media or play video games or whatever it is that they're doing. But we need to have that sense of community. We have to have those meals. And one that was really interesting recently, I did one of those constant glucose monitors, and I found some interesting insulin spikes. Eating the same food that I'd eat at any other time that would keep my blood sugar stable and normal. But if I took that food and ate it while I was working, my insulin spiked. My blood sugar stayed more stable by eating with other people.
I mean, it does make sense. You're getting away from screens, taking the time to actually chew your food, you're connecting, you're showing love. Those are things that supplements and peptides cannot buy.
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of goes back to everyone's heard of the fight and flight in the body, that's cortisol, adrenaline. You also have rest and digest.
Yep.
That when you're eating, you want your cortisol to be low because when you start elevating your cortisol, your body's not thinking, oh, I need to rest right now. I need to digest this food. It's, I'm in danger. I need to not put energy into this process. When you're working, I'm sure your job is not stressful at all, but I'm sure most people, when they're working, they have a little bit of stress with their job.
Mm-hmm.
So they're eating this food, it's not digesting well, it's causing blood sugar spikes and crashes, and it's leading to more stress, lethargy. They're not able to focus on their work, which is leading to more stress.
So I recommend everybody tries a constant glucose monitor for like 2 to 3 months and just see the crazy things that are going on with your blood sugar based off of the everyday activities that you're doing. Because I know definitely whenever I was experiencing stress, my blood sugar spiked.
I found the same exact thing when I tried mine. When I did it, I was kind of in my switch of careers where I was moving from hair restoration to doing this full time. So I was dealing with a lot, but one of I was dealing with rice and protein and all that. And my glucose was just going through the roof. we spend most of this talking about the basis of stress, and that is data that we cannot argue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all comes back to that because that's probably the most prevalent thing we see is just women stress, but like it's affecting so many people.
Okay, so let's go back to talking about the women and the high levels of stress and the fact that, women, we have cycles, and there's times where we should be able to work and we can work longer days, and then there's other days where we should be resting. Women right now are totally disconnected from their bodies. Most of us have no idea, where in our cycle anything is happening. And then we have women that are on birth control that completely takes away all of their cycle that, for 6 months at a time. Women aren't supposed to be constantly in that elevated state of high stress, fight or flight all of the time. So how do we help women get in touch with their cycle and identify when they're in their peaks and their valleys and when they need to be resting? And then how do we get that out to their spouses and their significant others so that they can support that?
Well, funny enough, I think it's actually just teaching women about their own cycle. I've had to teach with the luteal phases many times to women, but I think the apps are great. I think I use Flow myself, and men who are interested in coaching with me, I tell them to get better with their women is to actually get the app and follow their cycle so that they can understand when they're in the luteal phase, understand why they aren't interested in sex and their energy is lower and they're going to be reaching for chocolate and other things. That's the start of actually what it is, why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and understanding that you're actually going to withdraw some progesterone and estrogen going through that phase.
So I saw in one of those women's groups, there was a meme that was something along the lines of men are solar creatures and women are lunar because the moon goes through phases. And that felt very accurate to me just based off of what we know about women's 28-day cycles.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We're a 24-hour cycle. We're very simple creatures. It's easy for us to work with men because of how simple we are. But that's also kind of why I like working with women, because there is always a complexity to it. Yeah, the lunar and solar cycle, it makes complete sense. I've not heard of that before. But yeah, like the sun is just up and down every single day, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on the time of year, but it's still pretty consistent. Women, 100%, they are in flux with the moon. But that's not to say they also don't have some hormones on that circadian rhythm, which is the 24-hour cycle. Cortisol, testosterone. I would say those are a bit more on the 24-hour cycle, but for women, but estrogen, progesterone, those are on the 28-day cycle. Mm-hmm. So it's so much more complex. That's for menopausal women. Unfortunately, unless they can reverse it, they are going to need to be on HRT. Once a woman goes into menopause, their body is just like, it stops creating hormones. Mm-hmm. Nature's like, you're done. You got another few years, 10, 20, if you had good genetics, 40 years. But like a vast majority of women, once they hit menopause, they just stop producing hormones, period. So unfortunately, there's no natural way to start the hormones like there is for men. Like you can't just give a menopausal woman Shilajit and tell her that her testosterone levels are going to go up. It's important, like if they want that quality of life post-menopause, they are going to need to be in HRT.
Okay, so actually I'm going to ask some follow-up questions on that. What are the protective factors of each of the hormones and why we want them, especially post-menopause?
I would say estrogen, when you go through menopause, you're immediately at a 50% increased chance of cardiovascular risk.
Okay.
Because it has a lot to do with nitric oxide, protecting the endothelial function. Like progesterone, it's going to convert into allopregnanolone. And so that's another type of anxiety. Sleep's going to take a hit. And so I think progesterone is very protective in that sense.
And I'll say for some of the other hormones, testosterone gets a bad rap. I think for women, for whatever reason. Well, that's probably the first one they need to be on because it converts into the other testosterone, into the other hormones. Because estrogen does have a lot of cardiovascular benefits, neuroprotective benefits, but testosterone is what helps you put on muscle and keep it. So if your body's just not producing testosterone, you're going to start withering away.
Yep.
And there's been so many studies that are showing like when an older person breaks their hip, their chances of dying within the next 5 years goes up dramatically, like 10, 20%. It's a massive increase. It's like 50% of people that break their hip don't live another 5 years. And if you want to have bone mineral density, if you want to have the muscles to protect yourself from breaking your hip or breaking your bone at that age, you need to have testosterone. Like, period. You need to be strong, you need to be active, and it's going to protect you in so many ways.
Yeah, I hear that story frequently. You're not actually falling and breaking your hip, you're breaking your hip and falling because there's no bone density and there's no muscle supporting the bone. So it actually breaks and then you fall.
Yeah, the amount of women that are menopause, that fog, low energy, and there's like, I don't feel like myself anymore. They feel like they're trapped in their body. If they start HRT, that is the most powerful intervention they can do to feel like themselves.
That was definitely the one that had the biggest impact for me. I was able to think again. I could hold a thought in my brain and I could go from my bedroom to the kitchen and remember what I was looking for instead of getting out there and going, why am I here again? So that had a huge impact for me. But the energy levels were also massively changed by having the testosterone. So yeah, I agree, and personally felt the differences.
And one of my favorite things, especially for doing this with women, especially when I was personal training and getting women on HRT, when they get stronger, they feel more confident. And that's so huge for so many women nowadays. It's like, I was able to lift my luggage over my head. I was able to carry all my groceries. I was able to do X, Y, Z that I couldn't do before because I got stronger.
Mhm.
Having more confidence in yourself is just amazing benefit to have.
I was experiencing what I could only call like muscle wasting. It seemed like I was actually losing muscle. And there were times where I was like, I don't think I can pick up 15 pounds. At the gym now, I'm listing between 85 and 105. And that has been a good change over the last 2 years.
I was going to mention too, Mary, you mentioned the pellet's not really working well for you. Most of our women prefer injection. Keeping it at a very stable level.
Yeah, that's something Drake and I have talked about because when my husband was doing the testosterone, they were these massive needles. I'm not a fan of massive needles, but Drake was saying that you guys can mix it down with another, was it DMSO that you're mixing it with?
MCT oil. That's what you want to get.
Yeah, we get a much more diluted version where it's usually like 20 milligrams per ml.
And then you can use a much smaller needle.
When it comes to testosterone therapy, like, you don't have to suffer. I still have guys that they prefer to do a 21 gauge, 1.5 inch. I have no idea why, because then you're building up a bunch of scar tissue. Whereas if you're using a 5/8, it's not necessarily going to go muscular, but it's still being absorbed. There are studies showing that there's very similar efficacy. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be dreading every single time you get that injection. You actually want to be excited because you know that that's going to be vitality.
Somebody has decided it's time for attention. That's all there is.
I think it's probably just indicating we do need to all shut up. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're past the dessert and drinks we were talking about earlier.
All right, we'll end here, and then I will bring Dodge and Drake on again in the future for a longer conversation. So thank you both for joining me tonight. I appreciate your time and all of the knowledge that you've had to share. And to our viewers, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow. Dodge and Drake, how can people find you?
We are at Way of Life Wellness. Our site is wayolw.com. And you can find Dodge on Instagram.
We have an Instagram account that's WayOLWPM because all the others were taken. We don't put tons of content up right now, but we are going to be quickly starting to add content consistently and at least giving out some good information.
I will make sure that I gather all of your actual links and your website so that we can attach it to the post. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
You too.